Hello, everybody, and welcome to Authors Chat with Beth Jordan. This is the 18th episode of Authors Chat, and I'm really surprised that we're now at number 18, so we're gathering momentum. My guest today is a lady called Carol Elizabeth Marshall, who has written and published a most unusual book combining poetry and art. So here we have Carol Elizabeth Marshall. Hello and welcome to Authors Chat channel, Carol. How are you today?
I'm very well, and thank you very much for inviting me, Beth. I feel very privileged.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. My pleasure. Before we begin, listeners, I want to just read a little bit about Carol from her bio. So we'll begin to get a sense of this very special lady and what she's actually achieved in producing this wonderful book of hers called Creativity Sparked Resilience. Carol's journey as an artist and her commitment to using art as a means of healing and connection is truly inspiring. Her early passion for drawing provided her with a refuge from the chaos in her household, and it became a way for her to express herself and find solace. And Carol, I have to say that I've actually read all the poems in your book, and I've looked at all the paintings as well. And I just love the way that you have put all your energy and all your emotion and all your life's work and journey into this particular book. So let's start off by asking you, uh, is there what drove you or what motivated you at this specific time in your life to actually write this book? What had been happening for you?
Well, I think in the first instance, it was when I actually painted this painting, which is at the front of the book, Rockets.
Mhm.
And I was in a studio with a fantastic artist and became my mentor and friend, Caroline Hulse. And in fact, the book's dedicated to Caroline. And the last part of the workshop, I was with her for a whole week, and she asked myself, and there was four of us, to paint something, but we had to paint something that was very personal. And so I made a mood board, which is a photo in the book, and I wanted to paint a painting about the poem that I'd written called Rocking Still. And when she read it, she cried, and she said, "Well, I can't wait to see this painting if you can pull this off." She stood in the studio and watched me paint it, and literally can't remember doing it, Beth, because it just flowed out of my brush. It was like I was the conduit holding the paint.
Yeah.
And she arrived, and I think from that point, and I know that was the starting point. Caroline said, "You must go and do this more because you connect very amazingly and emotionally with your poetry, and it comes out, and you need to allow that to happen." So my life had been quite traumatic in a space of, from that point to the next 10 years, things sort of came at me like they do in anybody's life.
Yeah.
Loss and love and hardship and things of that nature, and COVID and all the rest of it. And I wanted to challenge myself. And then because of Caroline, because she had this innate sort of belief in me, that she said, "I can't wait to see what you can do." And that's why I knew I wanted this book to evolve. And it basically is about a memoir of my life, a little chapter, if you like, the 10 years of my life from when that happened to this point now, talking to you. So
Yeah.
it took me a long time to do it. It's not been like overnight. I mean, it took a long time. I had a lot of help from a lady to put the book together, a very, very professional artist, and we did it together. But it's been a sort of a love connection between myself and the book, really.
Yeah. So if you had to, and you don't really have to, but if you had to describe what genre your book falls into, how would you describe it?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think it falls into three sort of boxes. One being the artist box, which people will see how the paintings have come about, because I use lots and lots of different mediums. I use oils, acrylics, and collage, and that one. And then the poems, well, that becomes, you know, in the creative sense of using the word, not paint. And then there is a 3 chapters of backstory. So again, it's telling a story, but I tell a story not only with words and poetry, but with art, and they're all connected. So where does it fit? Well, it can fit in all those 3 boxes. So it's, as you say, I think in a sense of a book, it's quite unique. And I have had it on good authority from a chap who lives around here. Actually, he's quite a well-known poet called Ian Parks. And he said he's seen these books before where people have tried to, you know, if you like, create things from the poems. And he said this one really, really sat with him, and he thought it was quite suitable.
So it could fall into poetry, into the genre. It could fall into art, of course, definitely art.
Yes.
And it could, in a way, fall into a memoir of a sort.
Yes, definitely.
Because, it's about your life. Yeah. I think the paintings also, and I do love art. I cannot paint. It's one of my biggest dilemmas. And maybe after talking with you, I will learn a little bit more about how to release my own feelings into painting.
Oh, you must come and do a workshop with me, Beth.
I'll have to come down from Scotland and sit with you. Absolutely. I think do you know, Carol, that's a really great idea. That'd be wonderful, because I love the fact that I want to paint, but I can't. And so when I looked at your paintings, I thought, this is wonderful abstractness to it that really is captivating.
Thank you.
And I think it's so unusual. I've seen lots of abstract paintings from famous painters, but I love the colors that you use. I love the way you get mush form and what you call it, and feeling.
Yes.
So that is not really clear, but you get a real sense. And when you get that sense of it, it starts to bring up things within inside. And I think that's quite a unique one. No, maybe it's not unique, but for me, I think it's unique to see that. So this is your style that you've developed over the past 10 years. From was the name of the lady, Carol, who inspired?
Her name was Caroline Hulse, but I also
Hulse.
had another chap who has influenced me greatly called Martin Kinnear, and he taught me to use oil paints, and I spent 18 months with him using oil paints. So yes, I've had a lot of help from lots and lots of people.
Yeah. And prior to this, I believe that you used to teach art. And yes, and was your style of painting similar to what it has been the last 10 years, or totally different? Tell us about that.
Well, I would say that the style is a weird kind of phrase, because everybody evolves. Even Picasso, you know, he wasn't the same from the beginning to the end, and neither was Turner. But everybody's style changes, and it depends again on what's coming at you in your life. But if you have the craft being how to use the paint and how to manipulate it and make it do what you want it to do, then your style will evolve. And Hockney's style evolved. You know, you even used the iPad to paint.
Yes, I remember that. I remember at the summer show at the RA.
Yes,
seeing that. Yes,
it's fabulous. I would say that my painting, even now, is evolving, and I like to be, as you've said very kindly, that I'm very expressive, and I love colour. So wherever I take my style or whatever evolves, it always involves a lot of colour.
And you talked previous to this conversation, we'd had a little get together first, and you talk a lot about children and resilience and how we do know this art is therapy for them. Can you tell me about that? Because you did teach in schools for a long time, didn't you?
I did, yes. I firmly believe that children at all ages, and more so now, need to come away from these devices and use their hands and create from their brains. And that has been pulled away from schools because of funding. And when I was in the schools I taught in, you know, I made art fun. And again, going back to what you've just said, I can't paint. Well, a lot of people come at me saying, I can't do it. And I say, everybody is creative. It doesn't matter that you can't, you know, draw a horse like it's supposed to look. That's not art. to me, art is just being with the materials and finding out what you can do with them. And again, if you don't start and you're not given that opportunity, you don't find out.
True.
So to me, art is the opportunity of just having a go and being guided, you know.
Yeah. Up here in Scotland, there are so many artists and writers. And everywhere you go, you see the countryside painted in different mediums, different representations. And the ones that I like the best are the ones that aren't the usual pure representation of what I'm seeing in front of you, because otherwise it could be a photograph. I love it when they really, really poke and paint and do splashes and dabs. And from that comes this landscape that is pure imagination based on sort of reality. And I really, really like that. And I think that's why I like children's art as well. It's their reality.
It is, because they are not constrained by the fact that it doesn't look as it should look. You know, I start with a line. I line draw things and I don't look at what I'm doing. So I start with a sketch and I just draw it, and I don't look at the paper or whatever it is I'm using. I don't look at it. And then look at what I've made, and then I evolve that. That's my starting point with any painting that I do now. Any piece of art, that's what I do. I don't say that if I looked at something and I have to replicate it onto whatever I'm using, I can't do that because I find that too constraining.
So what is the reality of your art?
My reality is about allowing my creativity to connect with myself and to connect with personally the emotions that I have lived through and come at me, you know, in the future, whatever. I mean, COVID was hard for all of us, and a lot of people went to materials that helped them, you know, to cope with that, if you like, being aloneness. But I am very much an advocate for being creative in whatever way is possible. And I know that what we find, especially now, is that people want to learn more about how to, if you like, cope with emotions that they can't, they're not really happy with. You know, we get children who are anxious, and we get people who are aware that, you know, that they have to be resilient. And to me, being with creativity is a tool for becoming more resilient, and I'm very much an advocate for that.
Yeah, resilience is something that we can learn, of course, as we go through our lives.
Yes.
And I'm wondering just how resilient I am sometimes. I just can't cope with anything. But I do think that I did go to watercolor classes when I was living down in Hove.
Medium, you know that, Beth.
What?
It's the most difficult medium, watercolor.
Well, that is me. I like to start with difficult things to see if I can be challenged and actually create. And I found it difficult about the layering process.
Yes.
And I think, you know, as I'm just saying that to you, it kind of reminds me about my own life and my own resilience, the layers and layers of resilience I've had to cope with. And maybe that's why I find it difficult to do watercolors, because I can't cope with all those layers and layers of resilience. But I like the fact that in your title,
yes,
you've actually said creativity sparked resilience.
Yes.
Can we just spend a little bit of time talking about that title and what it really means to you and how it's resonated with you in your life and going forward as well?
Well, from what you read out, which is very kind of you, from a little chapter in my bio paragraph, to me, I know that resilience can be found when you are immersed in something that takes your brain away from worry, because we all worry about things. Some people worry even more about things that we need to actually park, if you like, and come back to, because we need to take our brains away from it to then be able to solve it. So being with creativity is a tool, and it's an important tool to help us with this. I mean, it's been proven scientifically that any creative practice, 20 minutes a day, it could be baking a cake, could be gardening, could be anything,
Mm.
can help your brain rebalance. And it's all about that rebalancing.
Yes.
It's all about taking yourself away and then concentrate on something that gives you pleasure. And then because you've come back down to yourself, you can go back and maybe cope with whatever it is that is a challenge.
Yeah, true. So yesterday I spent about 1 hour killing every nettle in my garden. I wasn't being creative, but I
Well,
learned how to use a scythe, which I'd never used before.
that's creative.
And I thought, okay, I want to clear this garden. I want to really clear it. I want to gradually create a wild haven. Because for me, I can't paint, I can't draw, but
Well,
maybe I can create my garden. Yeah.
I don't allow that word in my workshops, can't.
Oh, yes. There's no such word as can't. It's absolutely a ridiculous word. Of course we can.
Enjoyed it, didn't you? Thinking from this, this, if you like, this learning skill that you've learned to use a scythe, you now see the opportunity to be able to make the garden that you want.
Yeah, I'll use the scythe as my paintbrush. I'm being a bit silly, I know. But
I use a big paintbrush.
but I'd like to ask you something. You told me a little story, and there is one poem that I really, really resonated with. And let me get the name of it. Yes, it's called He Came to Sit Beside Me, which is in chapter 2 of your book, Truth and Acceptance. And I want to just say, I really like the way you divided your book into 3 chapters. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that after I've asked you to do this little thing. So I'd like you to, I believe you've got the painting of He Came to Sit Beside Me.
It's absolutely huge.
That doesn't matter. We can go, whoosh. Wow.
Enormous.
Oh, look at those colors.
Yes, this is an oil painting, actually. As I say, I use all sorts of mediums, but this is an oil painting. And I love oils because they are so adaptable, and you can do so many things with oil, which you can't with acrylic. But so yes, this poem came to me because I lost a chap in my life who I was very attached to, and would you like me to read it?
Yes, please. I love it.
Okay, so there it is in the book.
Okay.
He came to sit beside me. It took a while for me to know. Some people are meant to be together, connecting from a past spirit, a moment to unfold. He came to sit beside me. Was he asking for my heart? An H and a T separated in the middle, letters marking upset, letters missing from the start. He came to sit beside me, scarf on from the winter cold. Was he asking for my H and T so that we can be and feel and hold? He came to sit beside me. How I had waited for this day. My heart had felt sad and broken, yet filled with hope from where it once had laid. He came to sit. A question, a heart sink, a meeting. Yet in vain the eyes were glazed. To sit with a lost love, a future never played. Oh dear, that's brought me.
Yeah, I actually did have tears welling up my eyes. I'm a real softie sometimes, but I really did, it resonated with me so strong. So just out of interest, did you write that poem first and then the painting, or the other way around? How did it come about with all your poetry and your paintings?
That's a good question. 95% of them I have painted from the poetry. There was one particular paint, or 2 together that I hadn't in the book, but all of them, every other has been from the piece of poetry that I've written, and then I try to paint the emotion, the story. So that poem was written, gosh, quite a long time ago, and when I found it, because I got like hordes of poetry, and I decided that was going to go in the book because it was a point in my life that had resonated with me quite immensely. And to paint it, I knew that I could connect to that which I've already done just now, to the feeling that I had when I lost that man in my life. Now, what is weird is, can I tell you the story about what happened
Yeah,
after?
please do.
So I was invited to a poetry reading sort of back in July this year, and I didn't know where I was going. I was given some the address, and off I went. And when I got there, it was a building that was the business centre in a place called Mexborough, which was the old grammar school.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't know until I walked in that it was connected to the amazingly well-known poet, Ted Hughes, who was a poet laureate.
Yeah.
And Ted Hughes has a little museum upstairs because he went to the school as a child, as a boy. But what amazed me was I was asked to read from the book and talk about the book, which was very kind of them to let me do that. And what amazed me was the serendipity that happened, because the chap I've just read the poem about, his mum, many years ago, when she was a teenager, actually had a couple of dates with Ted Hughes. She went out with him. And that was incredible. The connection was incredible. So that made me smile somewhat as to find myself there reading out the poem and the connection that was in the building.
That is too serendipitous.
Yes,
I think
too.
So you wrote this poem about a guy that is like a lost love.
Yes.
And you go to a place in Mexborough.
Yes.
Go to a building to read a poetry, and it's a Ted Hughes poem. Oh my goodness, I'm not going to repeat the whole story again. That is incredible. And so you left feeling how?
Left feeling how?
Bad English, I know.
Just sort of, whoa, Well, I often feel that if we have to be aware of serendipity, and sometimes people don't see it, and it's like they walk around with blinkers on. But things like that happen to me and have happened to me, and I'm sure happen to lots of people all the time. But I often think there is a link, and the link then makes another link. Yes. And then makes another link. And if we look back, we can see the stages as to why we went to that thing, why we did what we've done, and why I've painted these paintings, and why the book is now in the form it is. So things have happened.
So have you had an exhibition of all these paintings from your book in one place?
Well, I'm glad you've asked me that, because the building in which I launched this book, again, that's serendipity, because I went to, again, it's a grammar school. So the building is now a library, a gallery and a museum. And it was my old grammar school. And it's a beautiful building, and it's a grade 2 listed. And I was given the opportunity to launch my book in the gallery upstairs. Which was absolutely serendipity, because I'd had art lessons in that building, in that place. And I actually mentioned that with a little speech I did. And again, it was like, whoa, what's going on? So I'm hoping, I've asked that maybe next year in May, connected to the Mental Health Week, they're going to give me an exhibition where all my paintings, which are huge, they're not small, will be in this particular gallery. Watch this space.
Yes, I'd love to come down and see
You're
all
not
your
the only
paintings.
one. There's lots of people who want to, and I want it to be interactive. So I want people to come and actually, do their own little sketches, make their own sort of little phrases or poems or whatever. We'll link that in.
So I just want to remind listeners that the reason why this channel is in existence is to really help and support indie authors, as Carol is. Indie authors meaning that we have to publish our own books. We don't go through the traditional route of actually getting an agent and then them finding us a publisher. So it's a very difficult thing in many ways to self-publish. And I wanted really to have this channel for authors as my guests to talk about their work, for people to get to know about their work, for listeners to get an understanding of the author, the reasons why they wrote the book, how they came to write the book, and that now it is self-published. And on that note, Carol, where do you sell your book? Because I know you don't sell it on Amazon. So how do you distribute your book?
Well, if people want to get in touch with me, they can find me on the internet. I have a website. I also have an Instagram page. So if they just connect with me and they interact with me, they will find me on this page. and it's carolelizabethmarsall.com, and I will come back to them.
Yeah.
And that's how they can connect with the book.
Okay.
They can also find me in the library, in the gallery in Doncaster, where I'm going to give lots of workshops, and one which will start on the 19th of September. And it's about a creative journey.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds really, really good. What would you like after this chat, listeners and would-be readers, to take away from how you feel, what you've done, the way you've written your book, your paintings? What message would you give to your readers and listeners?
I think the biggest message I want this book to actually ignite in people is the fact that creativity is a massive valued tool in our life, and that anyone can be creative. And as we've said before, children are very creative, and the funding being pulled in schools very much upsets me. We're failing our children. And I think the book in itself is a reference to how, if you like, empowering oneself to release emotion. Be it, yes, I'm an artist and a poet, but anyone can release, anyone can be with themselves in a creative way. And I think that's what I would like to think the book would resonate with people, you know, when they find it.
Yeah, and I think creativity, sometimes I'm speaking generalized, sometimes we think about creativity only as art, but there's so many forms of creativity that one shouldn't think creativity is art only. It's everything that we do. Even building a bridge is creative, you know, everything, you know, building a roadway is creative. You're creating spaces for people to move through. And I had an experience of the guy I was with who used to get a bit upset sometimes because he wasn't as creative as me. So I used to be in textiles and design clothing. I used to get very upset, but he was the most phenomenal negotiator.
Right.
He could negotiate anybody out of a difficult situation.
Okay.
And I had to constantly remind him, you are so creative. I could not do that. I wish I could in my business negotiate a deal the way you can.
Yeah.
Did he take comfort from that? I'm never too sure, really. I don't know.
But it's so true, Beth. You know, it's spoken truth. You know, everyone's creative. They just need to understand that.
Yeah. I think one just has to believe that whatever form of creativity we embark upon, we are creating that creation. And we should really embrace that.
Absolutely. The world needs creators. And they won't exist. You know, the world as we know it won't exist. Somebody created a fork for us to actually eat with. So we need that.
Yes, constantly.
Constantly.
Yeah. So after the publication of your book, what's been happening for you?
Well, various things. I mean, obviously, the little story about finding Ted Hughes. And then this summer, I went on a retreat down in West Sussex. And the ladies there, I knew before. So I've been to this retreat 3 times now. And I'm now going back next year to do the same retreat, but they're going to incorporate creativity. And I'm going to lead a workshop in creativity again. That is something that I didn't go down to find, and it found me. So serendipity happened. And also the workshops that are evolving in the gallery where I went to school.
That's incredible.
And to teach some workshops out of those. And, you know, people like yourself who have kindly asked me to talk about my book. And it just keeps going. So I don't know what's going to happen next week, but I'm sure something will.
Nice surprises will emerge, I'm sure. And do you have another book in mind for the future? Oops, don't talk about it. Yes, obviously there is one. Okay.
Yeah, I do actually. I do have a book. And it goes back quite several years. But I'm thinking, will I actually, you know, do some creative poetry around it? I probably will. I have got 2 or 3 things that I've already done. But it is a story. But it's based on fact, but it will be fiction.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for this very illuminating chat that we've had. I'm so glad I've had the opportunity to talk with you about your poetry, about your art, which I really do love. I hope one day I can afford to buy a piece of your work and hang it in my own home. So, so everybody, listeners and readers, I hope that you have enjoyed this chat that we've had with Carol Elizabeth Marsh, who's written her book, Creativity Sparked Resilience. And I hope that we can take something away from that for ourselves and go forward and create. Thank you once again, Carol, for this lovely conversation. And I look forward to meeting you one day very soon.
I hope so too, Beth, that we do meet. And it's very kind of you to invite me. And
it's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody, and meet you again for the next episode of Authors Chat and More.